It's a crazy thought process to leave 10 years MBA grinding all over the country in corporate America to go on reality TV. But it was that thought process that actually changed my life.
Somebody in your family, either side, comes to you and says, look, lend me $10,000. Here's your answer. I'm going to give you $10,000. It's a gift, but it only has one condition. You never, ever, ever ask me for money again, ever. Jason, I'm going to start. You had a very successful Wall Street career. And from what I can tell, you basically quit to go to reality television. Are you basically out of your mind? What is the story there?
I mean, that's like the most fair question out there. And I think that's a question that most people that like abide by the system would ask. Like, why would you ever leave this great job to go on reality TV? And it's the same system that kind of had me checking the boxes, promotion to promotion. And I was just miserable inside, but on the surface, everything was good. And it was actually probably breaking that whole thought process that the system's created is what changed my life personally, for sure, definitely professionally and financially. And so I think back at it and what I'm doing now with the platform of trying to get people to like restart and rewire the way they think about their career development and personal finances. And what I've been able to do in just 3 years with now this platform on Restart and Reset Instagram, we're making 1 million impressions a week, and we're making an impact on the way people change their careers, think about their careers and personal finances. So it's a crazy thought process to leave 10 years MBA grinding all over the country in corporate America to go on reality TV. But it was that thought process that actually changed my life. And I think in the last 3 years, Kevin, with what we're trying to do, I've made a bigger impact than I could have in probably 5 careers of being a banker.
Okay, but the basic theory there, what you're telling everybody and me, is that you're able to monetize social media. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Correct. I mean, yeah, precisely. You're able to monetize social media. And I think you got to take risks when opportunities come to fruition. I could be a banker any day I want. I go be a banker, snap my fingers today. Do you have the chance to like take a shot at going on a reality TV show every day? Absolutely not. And so for me, I was kind of unhappy with the career. And I'm like, let's take a shot. Let's see what happens.
But there was a lot of risk there. First of all, you take a shot, you could have sucked, and that would have been the end, right? That's risk number one. Number two, you may have never got traction. Lots of people go on to reality television, never get any traction on social, but neither of those things happened to you. You somehow found the path. Just, before I want to talk to Kaitlyn about this too, but
yeah.
What number? Everybody's interested in this. Everybody wants to have a social media base. Everybody wants to do what you did. Yeah. And tell me the number, just followers. Let's pick any platform. Let's just go Instagram. Okay. At what point did you say, shit, this is working?
It's a good question. And the difficulty in answering that question is that based on like kind of your engagement on Instagram, the ability to monetize could be drastically different. You could have an Instagram account with 50,000 followers and monetize much more successfully than an account with 2 million followers. So there's not this like architectural blueprint with Instagram. For me, I think when I did cross like the 500,000 mark, that was when I would say deal size and deal quantity was inflowing at a pace that at that time I was trying to keep up with, as opposed to trying to find more opportunities.
All right, Kaitlyn, over to you. Same thing. You've got reality television background, right? Mm-hmm. And you basically meet this guy, and all of a sudden you're two kind of social media stars. Are you dragging off each other? Is it like a jet, one behind the other, and you're getting the hydrofoil? How does it? I mean, because you're a social couple, and you're trying to create careers and monetize them together. Mm-hmm. How does that work?
Well, I think we both help each other in the best ways possible. Like, I'm definitely not a numbers person, and I'm starting to learn the business behind social media and how it can be a business. And I'm more of a creative thinker, and social media has just worked for me because I am like, what you see is what you get. I say inappropriate things. I've just always been myself on my platform, and Jason has helped me on the business side, and I've kind of helped him be more of himself on social media because I see the power and authenticity and what that attracts people, and it keeps your engagement up and everything with brand deals. Love to see it. So I think we've helped each other in that way, and kind of have been able to compartmentalize, like, that's a business. but we can also use it for fun and engage people in our own relationship and grow a business while doing that.
And Kaitlyn won't say it, but I'm going to say it. Kaitlyn was a social media powerhouse well before her and I started getting together, and she had been crushing everything she was doing within that space well before. So that was much before I came along. Wouldn't you agree? But
yeah, well, I mean, I went on TV before you, so yeah.
But I mean, Kaitlyn, when you started television and you just, I remember when social media in reality television was frowned upon because the networks wanted to control the message. And then all of a sudden they started to realize that you could push eyeballs with social media. That was about 6 years ago. And now it's all about social media. You went through that transition, I assume, right?
Yeah, I was actually, so it was 6 years ago when I went on The Bachelor, and that was really when Instagram was taking off. And you did not know the power behind like what could possibly happen, or that you could create a business, or that you could start things like that on social media. It was just the unknown at that point. So for me, I was really going on the show for an experience. I didn't have the background that he had. I didn't actually have education besides my high school graduation. And so I was like, there's really no loss here for me. And I would love to have a platform and a name and like try and get into hosting or doing something like that. So I was able to watch social media really grow, and I was able to have a really good team on my side, because I went from, working in a restaurant thinking like $100 in tips was a lot of money, to a flat tummy tea telling me, tell everyone you poop out this tea and you're going to make 10 grand. And I was like, what? And so I was so excited. And my team was like, absolutely not. If you want the longevity in some sort of social media career, you are going to turn down a lot of money to build a really important platform. And that's the only way you're going to do it, is if you turn down all this money. So I've seen social media go through a lot, as I'm sure you have too.
Okay, so let's explore that for a minute, because that's fascinating. So many people would like to have the lifestyles you both do and sort of monetize social media, but you just cued on something that really has turned out to be important. One of the factors that I think a lot of people didn't understand about social media just 36 months ago is that this aspect of honesty, particularly when you're promoting a product, people smell bullshit a mile away. So if you're being offered 10 grand to poop out a tea and you don't poop tea, you can't take that 10 grand is what you're saying, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's coming into that world. That was a lot of money to say no to. I mean, it's still a lot of money to say no to, but yeah, that's exactly right. And once you realize that and see the power behind engaging your audience and having them trust you is what's going to make them loyal. And that's what keeps them around. And that's how you keep, that's why a lot of people come off reality TV and crash and burn after, because they're just trying to make money in that moment.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Kaitlyn, your wine business. Now, I'm also in the wine business, so I really know how hard that is. And I've been in at it for about 10 years and only started making money 4 years ago.
Wow.
My model is a little different than yours. You're selling through big box retail. You're in Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about that model. You're basically licensing your name, but I'm going to make I'm making assumptions. I don't know the model, but I'm going to make an assumption because I know the business so well. Mm-hmm. The best strategy for you is to partner up with a wine maker. It has logistics to ship to somebody as big as Walmart, and then you brand it. Is that what happened here?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And have you told it? I mean, how much work do you have to do to go and get people to pull a bottle off the shelf? Do you have to actually show up for tastings?
I mean, I would if it wasn't quarantine. I've wanted to do that so bad and go in. No one's doing tastings right now because of that. I mean, maybe they're starting to again, but yeah, I have a really incredible team. I have 2 business partners that really have helped me navigate this whole journey, because again, like I am the brand, right? Like everyone knows Kaitlyn Bristowe loves to drink wine, that I've always wanted to create my own wine label, that I have a very loyal audience, and my podcast revolves around drinking wine. It's called Off the Vine. And it just like was such a natural thing for me to get into. I worked in the restaurant business for over 10 years, and I learned from sommeliers, and I was taught by them, and I had to train servers with wine pairings and knowledge about wine. So I was always really passionate about it. And I think everyone, again, they can see through the bullshit. They knew this was something that was like a dream come true for me to do. So it is a lot of work and effort, but I'm so grateful for my team because they're the ones that are doing, well, I mean, I'm on every call and, but they're the ones that really do the business side of things. And I'm just able to, be the brand and push it through that way, because social media, again, I'm reaching so many people in different cities and different states. And you don't need billboards anymore. And you don't need, obviously, like I could just go on my social media and say, like, go check out this Walmart. And like, I'm going to go to a couple today. Maybe I'll run into you, and people go out and buy it. And I really believe in the wine too, because it's all we drink. It's really good. And I think, again, people just know I'm super honest and they believe in it.
Interesting story too, with the social media aspect. She actually didn't immediately go to big box, right? So she started going direct to consumer through social media, built the brand. They were selling at a pace they couldn't keep up with. They then went through distribution, and they blew records out in British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario once they actually got into stores. And so Kaitlyn put all the money up front. Within the first year, she was profitable, got her investment back through a distribution. And when some of these big retailers were seeing these numbers and these endorsements from these distributors and things that were happening, they're like, all right, we got to give this a shot. So the model from D2C to being in Walmart effectively happened in less than a year and a half.
Yeah.
And all it goes back to that conversation, the power of authenticity, brand building, and being able to also use social media to be able to promote to so many people, right?
So Kaitlyn's like Bethany Frankel, except nicer.
Yes, that's exactly right. I am Canadian. I am much nicer.
I know Bethany very well, so I say that with a little humor and humbleness. But so Jason, back to you. Investing and understanding investing, and now that I understand you guys are contemplating marriage here, so we got to get into that in a minute. How do you handle that now? What do you think has changed in terms of your Wall Street attitude versus how you take care of your own money and Kaitlyn's? What do you do?
I mean, it's such a good question. One of the difficulties I would say is when you're W-2, when you're, working for a big corporation, there's so much security, right? You know what check's coming in, when it's coming in, your bonuses, although those are subjective, and that's a whole different conversation. I think one of the big challenges for Kaitlyn and I is making sure that we're on the same page with our finances, and that we are, while we're in this period of being able to monetize at an accelerated rate, the big question everyone has to ask themselves is like, how long is this sustainable? So one of the big things Kaitlyn and I do are like, we are wide open with our finances. And while right now income is at a point that we probably never expected, we're trying to scale back our expenses so drastically so that we can plan for a longer period of time from a financial perspective. And I think, one thing that's interesting that I'm going to ask you a question actually is, we open our finances, but now we're starting to look at a home, and we're starting to plan for our wedding and things like that. Do you have, as the shark, the investor, all your experience, what type of advice would you have for us as we're trying to plan for both the long term and the short term in a world where you kind of grew up in entrepreneurship of building a business, selling it, and the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows? What insight do you have?
So let me give you some advice that comes from experience, but also what I learned from my mother, who was very pragmatic. When she was single and growing up, she was taking 20% of her paycheck, and she worked in a family business that made children's winter clothing, and worked for her grandfather, and they used to pay the girls in cash each week. And she took 20% of it when she was 19 years old. And I didn't know this till after she died, but she was packing it away in her own name, in basically telco bonds and the S&P 500 stocks. That portfolio was there for 52 years. And she was married twice. She kept it secret from everybody. And when she died, the executor, I'm the older brother, called me and said, you got to come down here. Your mother died a really wealthy woman. And I went, what? I always wondered how she'd pay for cars in university, and paid my whole college, and took care of her whole family. It never occurred to me that she was investing this way. So she basically only spent the interest and the dividends. But over that period, this thing grew to a huge amount of money. And she was all about just taking a portion of what you make and setting it aside, not saving it, because saving doesn't make you any money. You make 0.3%, investing it. I learned from her. And now I apply it to sort of marriage. And I look at it this way. When I got married, we had nothing, $0 and nothing at all. And so we started the journey together. We were pretty open, just like you guys. But there's two things I would say that I have learned. A woman should never give up her own financial identity. She should keep an account in her name, credit cards in her own name, as the guy should. You need your own personal identity in terms of the markets, because they don't consider couples a financial identity. They consider individuals. And you know, not you want to harbor bad karma, but 50% of marriages in America and Canada and Mexico end in divorce within 7 years. And it has nothing to do with infidelity. This is what's so incredible. It's never infidelity. Most marriages can actually survive infidelity, but what they can't survive is financial pressure. And so it sounds to me like you guys are doing the number one thing is planning together, because the marriages that break up, it's usually one thing. One of the two never did any financial due diligence on each other. And maybe that other party was a spendaholic or a gambling addict, or, you know, had bankruptcy in their family, or had some secret financial issue that they didn't disclose. And it just completely corrupts the marriage. It's planning and saving, and it's really boring shit. But it's so important because the third member of a marriage is money. I wrote a book on it. I call it Men, Women, and Money. And it really looks at all of this stuff and realizes that great marriages that last a lifetime have a lot of financial stability. If that's your plan, you guys are going to make it.
I got a follow-up question, because I think we live in a world right now where incomes are just all over the places, and they're changing drastically within partnerships. And so there was, you know, a point several years ago, I was making more than Kaitlyn, and there's a point today, Kaitlyn's making more than me. And who knows in 10 years if that changes, or 5 years. So what are your thoughts on just the whole idea of like budgeting and spending based on what your individual like entity, like my entity, is making, right? So if Kaitlyn today is making more than me, how do you think budgeting should be? Like, should it just be correlated to your only income? Should the couple look at it as a whole? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
No, here's how it has to work. This is the only way to do it, okay? Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. Your income, and you're right. You're absolutely right. Incomes are all over the map. There's capital gains, there's income, there's royalties, there's, you know, your check from YouTube if you're running a channel. All these things are different. Speaking gigs, advisory businesses, all that stuff. So what I would do is buy a home together in your both your names after you're married. After you're married. It is an absolute shit show to buy property if you're not married, because there's just no way to resolve it. So you rent until you marry, and then you buy a property in both names. But you keep your own accounts. And you both have accounts, you both have credit ratings, you both have your own investments in your own name. And then you have this third account, and you both contribute to it to basically pay for the house, the mortgage, all the things you buy for the home, everything you share together, all the money you spend on vacations together, you contribute equally, you know, because you're both in a business together, but you still have your own gig. So if Kaitlyn makes more dough one year because her wine's exploding to the upside, good for her. That's in her name. Yeah. And then if you have something else going on, maybe you make an investment, it's a huge capital gain, that's in your name. Yeah. Now you're still married, and I would highly recommend a prenup that says we go in together, we know what we've got, have a number, you know what you're worth, and then you grow together. And where it matters is when you have children. Because if you never have kids and you divorce, it's much easier to separate the assets. You sell the house, you've got your own dough in your own accounts. And you fight a little bit about should there be a true up amount, but it's not a big deal. But if you got kids, all bets are off. All these prenups are worthless once you have children, because you can fight like hell for their support, and they should get it. I mean, you brought that person into the world. It's your responsibility. And so the way I look at it is everything is 50-50 in terms of all the costs together, but you keep your own accounts and your own dough and your own investments if you wish. And that way, if poo-poo hits the fan later, it's very easy to separate. Where people screw up is one of them gives up their financial identity, usually the woman. Very stupid idea. Very hard to get back. I mean, does that not sound like common sense?
I'm like, why didn't I ever think about the third account? Like it is complete common sense. You're right. That's
the third account makes so much sense. And even you could do like fun and activities, right? Like you go out for a nice dinner and stuff. You could just like use the third account or something. One thing
you both have that credit card. You both have that card. Right. Honey, we're doing this off our combined account. Honey, I'm doing this on my own account because I want to buy a watch and you don't need one. I have that fight with my wife every week. She says, we don't need another watch. You're an idiot. I said, well, it's for me. This watch is for me. I'm putting it in my coffin when I die, along with the other 1,000 watches. It's just one of those things.
I love it.
You're a watch guy.
No, one thing I have a podcast called Trading Secrets, and we get comfortable talking about uncomfortable things as they relate to money and just like breaking the taboo of talking about money. I think prenups is like the definition of that, right? Like people hear prenup and they're like, I don't want to talk about it. But I think getting comfortable with those conversations saves so many more headaches moving forward. So would you say, obviously you just gave Kaitlyn a suggestion on our situation, but in general, like, do you think every couple should have a prenup to some level, or do you think there are certain thresholds, or like, what's your overall take on prenups?
100% get a prenup for one reason. It forces you to do financial due diligence on each other. It forces you to ask the tough questions. It forces you to expose any weakness that could eventually, kill the marriage off. I mean, you really got to, when you do a due diligence on each other, it's really something you're doing out of love. That's the way I look at it. You're saying, I'm making a lifetime commitment to you and I want to know everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the crazy aunt you have, the nut bar uncle, all that stuff. I want to meet them all. I want to know what I'm getting into. And I'm going into this for 100%. Because if you don't do that, and that's kind of what happens, a prenup is sort of a commitment to marriage. You're forming a union that eventually, look, it's fantastic. You're in love. That's so euphoric. Everybody should have that. But 20 years from now, the reason you stay together is you've built something together. You built something, you have friends, you have a home, you've got kids, whatever it is. And that is a family you built, and you did that, which is really a business at the end of the day. The reason a family stays together is financially sound. I mean, this is just pragmatic. And the way I look at it is a prenup is the first step in that direction. And I think you guys should do it and, start your journey with total disclosure, because, what's going to happen to you. And I'm going to give you another piece of advice right here. You're very famous and you're getting more famous and you're going to get married, and people in your family for both sides are going to come and say, look, can you lend me $10,000? I want to start this, or I want to start that, or I have this, financial problem or whatever. You will become the never ending source of money to an extended family. And this is a big problem. Here's the answer, because it's going to happen to you right after you marry. Somebody in your family, either side, comes to you and says, look, lend me $10,000. Here's your answer. I'm going to give you $10,000. It's a gift. It's not a loan. I'm never going to ask for it back. But it only has one condition. You never, ever, ever ask me for money again, ever. Do we have that agreement? Mm-hmm. That way, we're going to have great Thanksgivings together for the rest of our lives. We're not going to have to talk about that $10,000 you screwed me out of, because I'm giving it.
You're going to write it off.
Yeah.
It's sort of, and I've done it multiple times. It's the right way to do it. I don't have this problem anymore. I feel like, the karma's good. I gave money away. I tell this to a lot of couples, because particularly couples like you, they're making your living off your brand. You just get bigger. The more successful you are, the bigger you get. And everybody makes the assumption you're stinking rich, even though you've got lots of expenses you have to deal with yourself. But this is how you keep families together. It's really, really tough. There's nothing worse than a money dispute between family members where there's blood involved and money. That never gets resolved.
Never. I don't know how many times we're going to have Mr. Wonderful here to give us financial advice.
I know.
Do you have any, so ask away.
I've already learned so much on yes, everything you're saying. Yes. No, that, wow.
I know. Do you have any questions or thoughts? No. Yeah. I think this was awesome.
Thank you so much.
No, look, I think it's a wonderful thing. You're kind of an example couple for a lot of people out there. Let's just talk a little bit about how you met. I'm sure you've told the story 100 times, but I want my followers to hear this. It's different.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell it or not?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Kaitlyn was on The Bachelor and then became The Bachelorette. And then she was single and she was doing her podcast where she travels all over the country. And I was my banker self. I was in Seattle at the time, and she asked me to podcast. And so it just so happened we lived 2,000 miles apart at that time. We've never lived within 2,000 miles of one another still to the day we met. And she was in Seattle doing a podcast, and she asked me to be her guest. So I went on her podcast as her guest. And
he totally had a crush on me though, too. Like,
I get that.
You brought a nice bottle of wine and 2 wine glasses, and you were like,
Kevin, can you blame me?
no.
No, absolutely not. But I'm going to ask you a question, Kaitlyn, that you can give advice to other women. And I have a, my own answer, but I'd rather hear it from you. How many dates should you go on before you close the deal? You know what I mean?
I would say like, okay, but the dates are like really.
Well, I'll set it up for you, because obviously you go out with somebody once. The only reason you go out again, I'm assuming, is you were interested enough on the first date to say, I want to do a second to find out more. Right?
I would say 5.
5's your number.
Yeah.
5's the number.
I can vouch for that.
I would say 3. What do you know on the 5th date you don't know on the 3rd?
No, after the 3rd, you're just making them wait. You want to on the 3rd, but you're like, I'm going to wait till the 5th.
I honestly think 5 is like, if I'm trying to go back in time, I think that was probably,
that's the number.
That's probably.
I wanted to at 3 and I waited to 5.
I think there's credibility right
there. Okay. Let's talk about a theory about infidelity for other couples to think about. Now, this is obviously a difficult issue, but after you're married and let's say you do screw around, I'm going to ask you a question. What is the right outcome? Should you immediately wake up the next morning and disclose what you did? Or should you try and make it go away in the back of your mind and never talk about it again? What is the right thing to do?
I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't be able to put it in the back of my mind. I just wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I would feel like a monster. Yeah. I would need to talk about it, or I would start losing myself and I wouldn't be the same person in the relationship.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think that could ever, like, that action, there's no like just burying that. That just
plus in our world, something could happen if you found out a different way. Like I don't know, for me personally, and I think you're the same, like I just wouldn't be able to live with it.
Yeah, 100%.
So let me tell you what the research says. This is a fascinating topic, because what I did when I wrote the Men, Women, Money books, I hired a lawyer and his team to go research this, to find out what the outcome was in terms of divorce on this topic. This is not financial stress. This is being a cheater. Okay. So it turns out, and this is fascinating, I apply it to business as well. When you lie to somebody and you've never lied to them before, but this time you've decided not to disclose that you screwed around, that always gets out. It gets out eventually. It may not be right away, it could be years later, but because you didn't come clean on it right away, your relationship is tainted forever. It will if you started with 100% equity between two partners, even though everybody had fights and everything else, but trust is there. And then you come back later and say, look, I wish I told you, but I got drunk. I was in a motel room in San Francisco, and I just forgot about it. That relationship loses 50% of its equity forever. It can still go on, but it's not the same relationship. Mm-hmm. However, if you have the balls to come clean the next morning and say, I did something really horrific last night and I feel really terrible about it, I swear it's never going to happen again. I don't know why it happened. You don't lose 100%. You still lose, but it eventually gets, it's like a piece of sand in an oyster. It eventually becomes a pearl because you were honest. Mm-hmm. I was really surprised to hear that data. And they did it on about 600 couples, because there is a lot of infidelity in marriage. But I think, what anybody listening to this could say is have the guts to come clean, or you will taint a relationship that you worked so hard on building in the first place.
1000%.
Yeah. And you may want to ask yourself, why would you screw around with somebody you love anyways? Right. What's the problem?
Yeah, there's a deeper issue there.
And I think obviously every marriage in the world, everyone creates different expectations, right? Like obviously, and I applaud anyone that can come back from infidelity once you're married. Mm-hmm. But like I think with us, and even for me, with my business partners too, is once you cheat, you've lost my trust, and gaining my trust takes so much. So if it's a business partner after you started your business, if it's a partner when you're married, like, to me, I don't think there's any, like, that's just my expectation. I don't think you can come back from that. I think you're the same way.
Yeah.
You agree? But I applaud
depends.
those people that do have the mindset
Depends.
where they could come back from
Yeah.
that.
I mean, if you have kids, I think that's a different
That's
story. It's
change,
just
yeah.
all circumstantial, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And
Well, you guys are planning kids, I assume, right?
Yeah.
That's another big financial issue. There's no question about it. But you gotta, I think the thing about kids, and I'll give my 2 cents on this too. I wish I'd had mine a lot earlier. And most people that get older realize I should have done it. It feels like you can wait, but it actually is better later on to have kids that are a little older when you're still young enough to enjoy them. It's just my 2
what age
cents.
did you have kids at, Kevin?
I have 2 children. One's in New York. She's 27. The other's 23 in San Francisco. He works for Tesla. She produces television. It seems to be in our family somehow. All this TV.
And so how old were you when you had your last child?
I had children at 37, and I wish I'd had them at 30.
Yeah.
That's my problem. I'm turning 36 next month, and I'm already feel like I'm so far behind, but it's so hard because
the good news for you is lots of women are having children in their 40s, but if you're getting married and you've already been together, I'd say chop, get going. Like,
I mean, we're kind of in that mindset. So yeah, I
All right, last question while we have you. What is your strategy or plan for budgeting for children? College, expense, everything.
So what's really interesting that you can plan for is your lifestyle changes a lot. You actually don't want to go out for that first year. You're so fascinated with, what is happening and learning, sleep deprivation and all that stuff. And it's such an amazing time for that first child. It's absolutely great that would happen, but I'll tell you, the problem is on the second child. That is where sometimes one spouse has gone back to work. In your case, it's going to be even harder. You're both going to have to keep your career going because of what you basically do. And, at the end of the day, you're going to find that the budgeting aspect is not as hard as you think because you're so sucked into the whole first year. Second kid, I didn't even sleep with my wife for 12 months. I couldn't take it. I was working so hard. I had to have sleep. And there is no sleep. If you have a 1-year-old and you got a newborn or two-year-old and a newborn, you're fucked. I mean, you're only sleeping 4 hours a night if you're lucky. And
I'm not going to do all of that.
That's going to be on, I don't know who, it's going to be on one of you guys. I mean,
so you slept in a different bed?
We did. I'm just disclosing the facts. And I've talked to lots of other couples that have had 2 and 3 kids. They've all done the same thing.
Oh, I know. We know a lot of couples that do that.
Yeah.
Sleep deprivation is a bitch. Like you can't make money when you can't think, and you really need 7 hours during a 24-hour period. It's really hard to get when you're raising kids. But I would say that you have to think about a child as costing $250,000 by the time they get to high school. And it's really expensive in terms of just the cost allocation. It's an investment. Yeah. In the old days, they used to put them to work when they were 15 to try and get back some of that money.
That was like the point of having a family. It was like a business at that point. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, but look, I think it's a wonderful thing in life. If you can do it, it's worth it. But again, you're going to be kind of a model couple in terms of so many people, and that see a couple making a living off social media and building personal brands are going to be they're going to be very jealous of what you guys have done. And I think it's remarkable that, you would have taken a career out of Wall Street and said, screw that. I'm going to take a chance in a very highly volatile industry. Television's a crazy business. I don't have to tell either of you that, but you manifested it into something great. And I think we should take stock and be pretty proud of you guys. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And I think you create an insurance plan in life through education and skill set. When you have an insurance plan, you can go out and take those kind of risks because you can always fall back on what's there. And another interesting fact, I just interviewed the CEO of Viral Nation. It's the largest social media agency in the world. And based on their statistics, 86% of kids growing up right now aspire to be influencers. And when he
Wow.
told me that, I was just blown away. And he's like, you can't be a politician anymore without having a social media presence. You can't be, you know, and he just listed all the different careers that you must have some sort of social media presence to be in. And it's a wild world we live in. We're fortunate to have one another.
Well, look, let's end it on this. Each one of us give the top 3 things you have to do to be successful on social media. You know how many people would be interested in hearing that from each of you?
Gosh.
Just top 3 things. It can be completely different. Okay, let's start with you.
I would say authenticity, being honest. I would say turning down money to stay true to that authentic self and build something. And then 3 wait, what was the question again? Top 3?
Well, you're somebody, we know that 80+% of people want to be influencers.
Right.
I'm asking you, what are the top 3 things you have to do successfully to even have a chance of becoming an influencer?
And I think it's about paying attention to your audience and to who is like doing polls, asking questions, involving them, because that's who is going to, like, you know, stick around. If you're paying attention to what those people want to see, what they want you to be selling, what they like, if you listen to those people that are following you, you will build it eventually and get their trust.
That's good. Yeah, I think my top 3 things, if people are trying to build a social media presence or maybe increase their brand awareness or small business they own, the first is you got to identify your niche. Like, what differentiates you from everybody and how can you make something impactful? What makes you you? And that's what I'll call your niche. The second thing I would say is the quality of your content. And I think Kaitlyn alluded to it, but finding ways to engage your audience, putting just really good quality stuff out there. You can't throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks. It's got to be.
I do that.
Well, you are a special, you're one of a kind, and it does stick. It's unbelievable. The third one I would say is consistency, right? So you can't just be like, have this idea, this dream, do it for a week and then be gone. People are, if you're going to do something every Monday, they're expecting it every Monday at that time. You got to be consistent with what you're doing. Those are my 3. Yeah. How about you, Kevin?
I would say what I've learned over these last 6 years is that each platform is different and constantly evolving. And you have to be a constant student of the little changes that are occurring. I'm not just talking about algorithms. I'm talking about the consistency of your message on these different platforms and who's out there. I mean, Twitter's completely different for me than Instagram is, than Facebook is, than LinkedIn is. And now I just started last week on TikTok. It was not a platform I thought I was going to get into, but I'm starting to watch what it's doing in the 18 to 34 Barstool kind of demographic and realizing I have to be there too. And so to me, it's half art. As Kaitlyn said, you got to have fun on it, and it's half science. Yeah. And it is the engine of monetization. It really matters. And I totally agree with Kaitlyn on the no bullshit. I mean, the minute you get caught, you know, just being a scumball salesperson, I think you're done.
Yeah.
There's no margin for error. TikTok,
yes, that cancel culture stuff. You get canceled.
Yeah. The TikTok thing I think is brilliant is because if you're an early adopter, there's going to be a next social media thing. And if you're an early adopter, some of these kids like were in college, they were the first people on TikTok. They started dancing, they dropped out of college, and now they're making millions and millions of dollars on TikTok. That's so scary. That's being an early adopter to this.
It is interesting, but I actually talked to the TikTok executives last week, along with UTA, you know, my agency, because I wanted to go into it from the scientific portion. And they said, what really matters on their platform for everybody listening here is original content. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's got to be vertical. It's got to be 59 seconds. It's got to be original. They don't want to see reposts off Twitter, off Instagram, off Facebook. They want original. And that constituency really cares about that stuff. If they see the same stuff on every platform, they just blow you off in the way that algorithm works. That's really good information. And so TikTok takes an additional amount of time to everything else you're doing, but it's a new vehicle, a new platform for many of us. And I think, you know, Kaitlyn, for you and your wine stuff, I think you should really drill down, dig in.
Yeah, I'm trying on the TikTok.
You're doing good with it.
Yeah. I just sounded so old on the TikTok. But yeah, you're right.
Well, listen, guys, I've really enjoyed it. This was fascinating. I wish you the best of luck, and we'll have to, you know, what we'll do is we'll do it again. We'll check in after the marriage, and we'll see how all that went. You know, I have to tell you, I'm huge in the wedding industry. I'm an investor in Honey Fund and, you know, one of the biggest greeting card companies. And I've been doing the wedding gig for years and years and years, and it's really changed. The one thing I would say is the average wedding in terms of dollars spent is down 50%, because people are doing smaller, more intimate weddings and then holding parties afterwards. Now, whether that changes after the pandemic, but right now there hasn't been a lot of weddings with 200 people in them yet. It's going to take time.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I think there's some people trying to make up that lost revenue with us.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have an interesting opportunity. You can actually have your wedding sponsored because of who you are. And you may want to make it a big deal, and you would still be credible with that because that's where you came from.
Right.
It's a crazy.
I'm gonna end on a bachelorette story because Kenny, the director of Shark Tank.
I love Kenny.
So Kenny is also the director of Bachelorette. So one night we were shooting Shark Tank in Culver City. He said, "Hey, Kev, you want to come for midnight? The girls are coming in for the first time tonight. You can come and watch it happen." Now, as you know, there's plenty of libation on the set. I've been working for 10 hours and I got up there and I hit the bar. I really hit the bar. I was liberally hitting the bar. And then when they started shooting, I started cruising around right on the set, giving advice to all the women. And Kenny freaked out. He said, is that Mr. Wonderful walking around in the middle of the show?
What season
when was
Do you
this?
remember?
This was 6 years ago, and I got banned for life. I got kicked off the set at the mansion. I can never go to the Bachelorette again. I'm legend. I'm legend there. That tape is legend. I walked around giving advice. I'll have another drink. You know, it was just it was.
And that's when they didn't have the 2-drink limit. The bar was just free for all at that point.
Amazing.
Oh, that's so fun.
That's a good.
For a while, I was the bartender. It was just getting that much fun.
Maybe you're on something here.
That's awesome.
They should bring you back as the bartender.
Yeah, maybe I can make a guest appearance again. I'm gonna do a plug for a new show I just finished taping at Telemundo because it actually applies to what we've been talking about. It's called Money Court, and it's all about disputes of money between family members, business partners, landlords, tenants, anything to do with money. I actually have a federal judge, Ada Pozo, and a trial attorney, Katie Fang, as my partners, and we hear the cases. Think about it's sort of Judge Judy on steroids because these are real litigations.
Wow.
And I taped 6 eps. I can't believe how crazy it was. It starts airing August 11th, right after the Olympics on CNBC. Tune in, everybody. That's just a shameless plug for a new show.
As you should.
Love
it's your
that.
platform.
I can see you as the new Judge Judy. I'm
That's
in for that.
amazing. Congrats on that.
Congrats.
Well, I have a lot of respect for Judge Judy because she built this a massive franchise. I wanted to take it more in the business direction, which is really my domain. So I'm trying to stop partners from suing each other, get their business back on track, because nothing destroys value like litigation and a money dispute. So it's brutal.
If you like that video, wait till you see my next one. Don't forget to click right over here and subscribe.